Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Dr. Claudia Albers, Planet X research and professional physicist. And today I'd like to bring to you another one of my articles. This one's entitled, "We Are Angels Trapped in Flesh Bodies as in the Matrix." Who are we is the question that most of us ask ourselves at some point in our lives. As I have shown in Article 604 entitled Planet X and the Reptilian King, Lucifer is the ruler of this world and he is our enemy. Lucifer decided a long time ago that he wanted to rule like God does. And God is a creator of spiritual beings. God created all the angels, including Lucifer. Lucifer decided that he wanted to have his own created beings who would worship and serve him just like God had. We know this because we know he rebelled and stated that he wanted to be like the Most High. For it says in Isaiah 14 verses 12 to 14, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit upon the mount of congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High." We also know that God destroyed several star systems, which then became the Planet X system of stellar cores, and we know that these planets had buildings on them that looked a lot like the buildings we have on Earth, indicating that the same technology was in use. Since Lucifer has so controlled our scientific development, it is to be expected that he is in control of the technology that is used on this planet, and thus in charge of what types of buildings are built. And here you can see some buildings within clouds. And these are seen floating in the sky over the ocean, because this looks out over the ocean. And building outlines can even be seen behind these front buildings. And these buildings are seen as over a region where there's nothing but ocean, and can only be upon a piece of rock which used to belong to one of the Planet X system planets. And these have been coming into our solar system for a very long time. They've been observed for thousands of years. And you may look at articles 583 and 584 for more details. And in particular, if you have questions about whether they are mirages or holographic projections, I have clearly explained in article 584 that it is impossible for them to be either mirages or holographic projections. Now, so this suggests that Lucifer was the ruler of the Planet X planets, and that God destroyed them in response to his rebellion, and in order to use those planets to control the time that Earth would be allowed to continue to exist. And you may look at article 585 for details. And here you see the people in a city, people on Earth. Very similar to the idea that we had in the movie The Matrix. So if Lucifer wanted to be like God, he needed to be able to create living beings that would be able to think and worship him. The debris pieces that come into the Earth's atmosphere have buildings on them and even greenery, and indicate that these planets would most likely have animals on them. This suggests that all planets in the universe, once fully formed, and if Planet X objects are not around to interfere with the formation process, end up able to support the sort of life we have on our planet, including animal life. Animals have intelligence, animals have feelings, and they have instincts which direct them to eat and procreate. It seems likely, therefore, that Lucifer found a way to use what was already available to create intelligent flesh and blood human beings. But these were much like animals. They had feelings and intelligence, but once they died, they were gone. They had no spiritual component. These beings would, like animals, have a soul with a personality and instincts that drove them to eat and procreate and do all the things that the flesh body required. Lucifer is still creating various flesh and blood beings, which often look a little different from us, such as the blue avians, the greys, etc. These are flesh beings under his control, in which he uses to deceive us into thinking that the universe is full of such beings and that they all want to visit Earth. But he wanted more. He wanted beings more like the ones that God created. He wanted beings that would not die and that would be just like him, having his nature and thus doing his bidding automatically. He wanted beings with spirits in them, so he came up with a plan. He deceived an angel into entering the flesh and blood body of one of his creations on planet Earth. It must have been fun in the beginning, a new experience, just like playing a very vivid game, but it became deadly. We can gather this from the account in Genesis of Adam and Eve eating of the tree of good and evil. And this is what it says in Genesis 3 verses 4 to 5. And the serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die. For God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. This angel had been warned by the Creator God not to do and not to participate in the flesh world, as it would result in death. But Lucifer convinced this angel that there would be no death, no destruction, but that he would lead to wisdom being gained so that he could be more like God. So the angel eventually did go into a flesh and blood body. He went into a female body and became Eve. She then convinced another angel to do the same. He became Adam, who was most likely the leader of his angelic race, which I will refer to as the Adamic race, and they became trapped in the flesh and blood bodies and could no longer come out of them. In addition, the bodies themselves drove them to do what was not right before God, the situation being made worse because Lucifer had control over the bodies and could input his thoughts through the body's soul or central processing unit. Adam lived for 930 years knowing that he was trapped inside that flesh and blood body. In addition, every time they created a baby, they pulled another angel of the angelic race out of eternity and into a flesh and blood body as well. And here you see an illustration of what Adam and Eve may have been look like in the Garden of Eden, which was basically earth. And so they were forced, they went in and they were trapped, they couldn't get out, they were forced to live out their lives in the bodies, which thus became prisons for their spirits. And why did Lucifer need them? It was because he needed spiritual energy to create his ultimate creation, the one that would serve him perfectly and not die. And every time one of those angels trapped in flesh blood bodies go through trauma, through fear or pain, any suffering, they release the energy which he needs. And children, innocent children, especially newborn babies, release the most when they are tortured and killed, which is why he wants babies to be aborted. Then if he manages to convince them throughout their lives that there is no God and they never ask God for forgiveness for their sins, which the flesh and blood body drives them into, he can also take those angels to hell, where he will torment them until he can get every bit of angelic energy out of them, which he uses to create his race, his created children. This is why he deceives humanity. This is why he doesn't want people to know who they are, who God is, or who he is. He especially does not want people to know that God so loved the angels that were being stolen from him, that he came and allowed himself to be born in a flesh and blood body and suffered and died in order to pay the price, so that whoever wants to be saved from this prison, this horrible destiny that Lucifer has for God's Adamic angels, could be saved. Is there any other corroborating evidence that we are angels trapped in flesh and blood bodies? Much of the truth I have uncovered, I have done so because Lucifer likes to mock us by placing the truth in front of our eyes in a very blatant way, but most of us do not recognize it because of previous indoctrination. In other words, we are asleep or blinded to the truth that he places in front of our eyes. For example, we see that the sun is going dark during the so-called STO eclipse season. And you may look at Article 535 for details on that. But because NASA insists that it is only an eclipse, physicists and astronomers convince themselves that it is the truth. After all, why would NASA lie to us? And here you can see that it's clearly not an eclipse. The sun is going dark. If this was an eclipse, the Earth would be here, and this diagram represents Earth. And so everything that the Earth does not cover, and this would be what Earth would be covering of the Earth, everything else would be visible. But surely what we're seeing here is not what is just not covered by Earth, because there's no way that Earth can cover this piece of the corona. You can see it's not there. It shrinks back because the sun is actually going dark. And if this was an eclipse, this part of the corona, they're only 4 minutes apart, these images, this part of the corona would still be there, because there's no way the Earth can cover that part of the corona. So this shows that the sun is actually does go dark. But NASA will tell you that this is an eclipse. So they are mocking us. They're showing us the truth and telling us the opposite. So we are being shown the truth because he mocks us with the truth, and because he thinks he is in control of the human mind, but he does not have full control. This is one reason why he wanted to create another race more like him. And there are many that have been awakened by God. He also shows us the truth, or at least part of the truth, in the movies. The movie The Matrix shows us who we are, angels trapped in flesh and blood bodies, living our lives on planet Earth when we actually belong in heaven and in the stars. The Matrix is planet Earth, which is controlled by our enemy, who can take over anyone, and that has not yet accepted God's gift of freedom. In the Matrix, AI is in control, and on Earth, our enemy is using AI to control as well. But truth and freedom is available. We can call on Jesus, ask for forgiveness, ask him to take over our lives. For he said in Romans 10 verse 13, "For whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved." And these are the references. This is Dr. Claudia Albers, Planet X physicist. Thank you for watching.